What was your most intense first day on the job experience? Okay, so I know this is your first day at a fast food restaurant, but I got to get back to the register. Hope you know how to use a deep fryer. Toodles. Frick you, Galvin. Well, you're on the crew. Now, here's your pager, but don't worry, there probably won't be a fire for a wee. Beep 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 beep. Well, crap. My first job. I was 15 and desperate to find a place that would hire younger than 16. I'm walking around my local strip mall and I see this hole in the wall Chinese takeout with a help wanted sign. It's about 4 PM. I walked in and was greeted by a 4'10" version of the landlady from King Fu Hustle with an American replacement name like Becky. No real names. She pulls out the carbon ticket and says, "Help you? What you like? It says help wanted on your window." Huh? I'm looking for work. You want work? Yes, please. Okay. She waved me to the counter as I was near the now closed door. You pick up phone, say Chinese takeout, I help you. Then write order on ticket. Okay. Large or small? No medium. Okay. Now the calculator. Add up older and taxes like this. 8.1%. Okay. Tickets go here. Both. Delivery is 45 minutes. Okay. And she went back to the kitchen. I winged it on the phones for an hour. Only 2 orders, until another employee showed up. Mormon girl named, let's say, Catherine. She spends the rest of the night teaching me more about what to do in the ticket shorthand the kitchen staff can read. Great girl, super grateful for her. Couple other employees show up a little later. 2 delivery drivers and another counter girl. Around 8 PM my ma calls me saying, "Where the frick are you?" "I'm at work, I think." She said I'll be done by 9. It's a Chinese takeout on street. 9 rolls around and she asks what I want to eat. I tell her I'm broke. Turns out each employee gets a pint of half whatever as long as it's not expensive. Half rice. I get some orange chicken and she says, "Come back tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Okay. Best job I ever had. Loved those people. First rotation through the year as an imaging student, there's a code call. I had no idea what was going on. My tech teacher looks at me and says you had to pass CPR to get in here, right? I just look at him blankly and say yeah. He responds, "Good, you then me." Next thing I know I am in a 1 trauma room with about 20 other people doing CPR on a woman as the doc does his best. 2 people before me, the doc calls time of death. My tech and I go back to our little x-ray room and just go on like someone didn't just die in front of me on my first rotation. I had to take EMT training for work and part of that entailed spending a few shifts working in the hospital. I witnessed 2 deaths on one of my shifts, and I'm thinking to myself I didn't sign up for this. I was overlooking a job site where a very expensive rock saw was cutting a 20-foot deep trench initially in what should have been, as surveyed, a solid limestone bed. My new boss at the environmental consulting firm let me know there was nothing that could possibly happen, that I needed to be there for the initial cut, and that it would be the easiest day of work I had ever had. Boss leaves for a different work site. Couple hours later the saw begins its first cut and it breaks through an ancient clay sewer line that was directly underneath the giant saw machine. The machine sinks about 7 feet into the ground. Best part, the operator gets out of the saw, walks over to me, the site manager, and the other official individual and says, "It was like that when I got here," gets in his truck and we never saw him again. My dad had an employee, a person he would have called a friend, total my dad's truck then disappear. He fled the scene and apparently packed up his house and moved away, all in the span of a day or 2. People. I worked on a suicide hotline for a year. My shift was a weekday afternoon, so supposedly it wasn't too busy. My first shift came immediately after finishing the mandatory training period. I had 4 calls in a 2-hour period, one of which needed emergency intervention. I think my heart raced through the rest of the night. What do you even say to the people on the other end? Please don't kill yourself. That would be so much more paperwork. I am making a joke, but I am still curious, what do you say to them? First day working in a mental hospital. We had a patient elope and had to chase him. He jumped over a barbed wire fence. I figured if he could do it, then so could I. I couldn't. I got caught. My pants ripped. Cuts on my hands, legs. and abdomen. Then once I got over I lost a shoe in the creek bed. I met my shift supervisor wearing jeans turned into chaps and bleeding everywhere. They had me go home to change. Since I had just got a new car and I didn't want to get it dirty, I stripped down. I scared the crap out of my family, showing up 5 hours early, naked covered in blood and mud. My boss changed my start date and time without telling me, so I showed up a day and a half early. This was after orientation, so we had already met at this point. He said it was fine, so I started then, but he didn't actually have any time set aside to train me, so I just kind of shadowed him for the day. First interaction with an employee, I was middle management. He made her cry by berating her. I turned out a lunch shift person called out hotel restaurant, and he wanted an opener to cover it. Only it was her birthday and she was having lunch with her parents who were driving 3+ hours to see her. She was also like 18 and still in school. So he literally yelled at her about how little she cares about her career and how she's wasting everyone's time. I didn't last 3 months there. Their annual employee turnover was 97%. I laughed when they told me because I thought they were kidding. Other than upper management, I only knew one person who had worked there longer than 1 year. They're hemorrhaging money on employee turnover and probably don't even know why. They probably blame millennials or some BS. Not as intense as some, but when at university I worked doing outreach with underprivileged children, 9-10-year-olds. We had our training the day and I was all excited. My group were cool, but very streetwise. Come lunch and think back to the training, sit with them and talk about what they want to talk, but if possible try and have a conversation about their dream jobs. I asked the quietest kid in the group and the kid next to him said he won't have a job. He'll probably just lie on his couch all day and smoke crack. At no point in the training did it cover what to do if a 10-year-old starts talking about drug use, and so, flustered, I gave an embarrassed half laugh and changed the subject. Unfortunately, the kid then spent the rest of the day saying he'll do crack. It was only later on that I realized how sad it was that this kid obviously had personal experience with someone who does just that. I did report it to my boss, and annoyingly soon worked out how I should have handled it, but it was an eye-opener for me. Being taken out to lunch by a manager and having to listen to him talk about his miserable marriage. Then, of course, he hit on me and tried to hold my hand. First day working at the golf course in my hometown back in high school. Dude training me took me to the driving range to show me how to drive the ball picker. Got in and said there's only one rule you need to remember when driving this thing, and proceeded to pull out a monster blunt. You gotta be high, man. Man, I miss working at a country golf club. I worked the beverage cart and just drank beer, read a book and got monster tips from the members all day. Good times. First day on the job we had a dog come in that had completely eviscerated herself. She had had a foreign body removal surgery. She ate something she couldn't poop out the week before and her owner didn't follow the very explicit and serious discharge instructions about her keeping her e-collar on 24/7. She was allowed to have it off at home and tore open her stitches, ate through her peritoneum and damaged multiple organs. She came in on the gurney with intestines hanging off and had to have her spleen and half of her small intestine removed. First surgery cost them $6,000 plus. Second surgery cost them at least $10,000 plus. I started an internship when I was 21 and was told I would be helping out with media releases and social media. 2 months later I walk into the office to start my internship, and I'm managing an international trade mission with delegates from all over the world to Africa. This was an unpaid internship, by the way. It went about as well as you'd expect. I was 16 and had my first day of my first job at Kroger during the Super Bowl. It was an 8-hour shift as a bagger cart runner, and to this day I think it will be difficult to top how exhausted I was after that day. Hey, got hired at Publix on Thanksgiving week. I know how it feels. Fun stuff. Not first day, but this was within the first week working at a gas station. I was brand new and stocking some things in the store, and my co-worker, who was kinda still new, was operating the tills. The manager went to go to the washroom. This typical lady with the I want a manager haircut walks in and says I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but there's a truck on fire in your parking lot, and wouldn't you know it, Crap was on fire. I bent the bracket trying to yank the fire extinguisher off the wall and eventually put the guy's truck out. 5 minutes later the manager exits the washroom to a busted wall mount, a missing employee, and a pickup truck covered in white powder. Filled out new hire paperwork for a job as an installation technician and was told to come back the next day for training. Turns out training was working a 12-hour shift while shadowing the area manager on his route. That ended up being one of the best and worst jobs I ever had. I was a temp at a property management company. Turned out that actually meant handle the front desk immediately after a major fire caused by one tenant's gross negligence, and handle hordes of people super pee off when their home is destroyed, uninhabitable, or just blocked off because it turns out asbestos remediation is a thing after the building has been on fire. TLDR, get renter's insurance. It's cheap and makes a world of difference when your idiot neighbor lights the building on fire. Not so much intense as mind-bogglingly stupid, but my first day at my current job, the other new hire who had the same role as me fell asleep during orientation and training. Granted, we were talking about it'll, but seriously, this girl was snoring. My boss just kept going. She didn't last long. First day working as a chef de partie at a restaurant. Had almost no training. I was to come on and learn at first. First day on the job. The sous chef and assistant sous got trapped in their driveways by a bunch of downed trees. Big storm. So the only people working the line were me and the head chef. Yay. We had a veteran waiter do desserts pastry so we didn't have to worry about it. I managed fry, grill and the griddle all by myself. Head chef took saute, salads and fish stations. Oh, did I mention it was also Memorial Day weekend? So we were booked. I didn't have a single sendback or complaint. But man, I was dead tired by the end. Head chef bought me a 12-pack of nice beer and a bottle of whiskey as a present the next shift. Easily one of my favorite days on the job though. Was a correctional officer. Threw me right into an open, direct supervision pod full of about 64 inmates day one without even orientation. Had no prior experience beforehand. Was terrifying. My first day as a brand new nurse. 75% of the patients on our floor were actively dying and most of them were younger people with children. I had to take 5 deceased patients down to the morgue. To this day it is still the most emotionally taxing day I've ever had at work. Everyone was honestly shocked I came back the next day. I was 17. First day on the job at PetSmart. It was hot as heck outside. My boss ran in the door carrying a limp Australian Shepherd. He screamed at me to go get ice from one of the nearby restaurants. Some butthole had left the pup in their car to go grocery shopping. My boss disappeared into the banfield at the back of the store and throughout the day I kept an ear out to hear if the dog would be okay. At the end of my shift he finally came out, tears still running down his face, and fuming mad. The dog did not make it. I spent the rest of my shift trying to hold it together but eventually ended up quitting. I wasn't sure if that would become a daily occurrence and didn't think I could handle it. First day at a pressure washing company. I watched a guy cut the front of his foot off with one of the pressure washers. Commercial level 10,000 C. I always wondered if residential power washers could do that. I own a Gasser Generac that advertises 3000 C. Took mortars within an hour of landing in Afghanistan. On my first deployment. On a base that hadn't been attacked in 3 months. I might be bad luck. Reminds me of my first night in Mogadishu. The Marines thought it would be funny to make MRE heater bombs and set them off in the bombed out airport terminal where we're spending the night. First day as an echocardiography intern at Robert Wood Johnson Hospital in Rutgers. I was taken with my supervisor up to the NICU. There were triplet preemie girls, about a month early. They were so small that there were no diapers to fit them so they used a piece of gauze. We had to check their hearts to see if their ASD was closed or not. We had to reach in the incubator and very gently scan their little hearts. The father just sat there in a chair in the dark with his head in his hands. It was surreal. Hope, Faith, and Anna. I think it was Anna. This was a while ago but that image is seared in my mind. We went back every day to check them. One by one they passes. I heard the mom never went to see them. The dad just sat in the same spot. I need a drink. I was a surgical tech on a pediatric cardiac team for a few years. Going up to Niku and doing PDA ligaturans was always my least favorite. The babies are so small they don't even look real. My first night working security during Fantasy Fest in Key West, I had to break up 3 blowjobs, 4 finger banging sessions, tell 80 some odd people to stay off their phones, tell 8 different dudes they couldn't have an erection, throw out a dude for pee off the balcony, throw out and 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 TL. DR. Working at a naked clothing optional bar is different. Got a job at Sony. First day, flew to Tokyo. Before I left, I went to a map store and got a Tokyo street map book. At the time, I believed it was a crappy book because none of the streets had names. I volunteered to be navigator for our group. Using the map book, I managed to find most of the places we needed to go, but it was hard. We were standing on the street. I was looking at the map book, trying to make sense of it. A Japanese dude came up and said, "I'm learning English. Can I speak English to you? Would you like to hear the inaugural address of John Fitzgerald Kennedy?" He then proceeded to recite it with a Boston accent. Methinks he memorized the sounds of the words from a recording. He then asked, "Would you like to hear the inaugural address of Ronald Wilson Reagan?" I said no, we just need help finding a place. He then proceeded to tell us his master plan. He wanted to learn English, move to the USA, become a lawyer, get elected to Congress, change the constitution to allow foreigners to be elected president, and be elected president. I responded, "Oh, you should know the 2 kinds of people that many Americans hate are lawyers and politicians." He gave us directions to our destination, and we thanked him. Later, I learned that the map book I used was the official map book of Tokyo, used by cab drivers. I also learned that Japanese streets don't have names. Or nursing student with an intra-op code blue. Dumbass shot himself in the armpit on purpose. Blew out all the arteries and airways. We tried to save him anyway. He got rolled and screaming, "I don't wanna die." He did. It was a beautiful April day, and he was 22. We openly massaged his heart to try to keep it beating. The surgeon called it at 1:10 in the afternoon. A guy was killed on site on my first day. Unfortunately, no one found him until the next day, so my second day was a bit crazy. We actually got sent home. Working in an open cut coal mine, an engineer went to look at an old pit and fell over the wall. Fell about 45 meters, landing in shallow water. He managed to swim to the edge but died there on the edge. Because it was an old pit, nobody went there, and his wife was out of town for the night, so she didn't raise the alarm until the next day when she realized he never came home. They found his car still idling at the top where he fell from. A few years ago, I got hired as a new teacher at a rough school district 3 days before school started. It was my first year teaching, so I had absolutely no resources, and this class didn't have a curriculum or any other teachers that were teaching it. It was 5 sections of 9th grade general science, which are all kids that had failed 8th grade science. Full stop. I had no freaking clue what I was doing. The first day itself went relatively fine, but getting thrown into it with zero preparation was scary as heck. Sadly, the year got much worse after that first day, and I'm amazed that I made it through the whole year after how horrible it was. I feel I'm a teacher's aide or get classes. Our previous teacher left and our director dead, right at the very end and start of the fiscal year. There's a new teacher who has no idea what he's doing, and I'm the only one who knows what supplies we have and what to do, but there's so many things I also don't know how to do or what to do about it. Got into a car accident with my boss in the car. After everything was cleared up at the scene, I was sure he was going to tell me I was fired. Instead, he started laughing at how scared I looked and assured me that I had nothing to worry about. Your boss is awesome. I was hired on as an operations manager in a factory. I was in charge of about 40 people. The job required lots of walking, up and down grated stairs. It was a loud and dusty work environment, and almost everyone there did nothing but jack off when management wasn't around. Now for the interesting part. On my first real day, One of my employees got their hand caught in one of the grinders and lost the tips of his fingers. There was blood everywhere and he was screaming. I immediately saw what was going on and ran towards him. I slipped on a banana peel and fell on my back. I'm 6'4", so as you can imagine, it was a hard fall. I got up immediately and took care of my worker until the ambulance arrived. That was all before 9 o'clock. First day in the coal mine and I'm mucking. Doesn't sound bad, right? First you only have a cap light to see with. You climb down 4 separate 50 featuring ladders, wet and crusted with coal dust. You end up in a metal box that is filled at least 7 featuring deep with coal dust and water. If you don't know, coal dust and water turn into a sludge, i.e. muck. You then shovel 3-gallon buckets full of the muck and pull the rope tied to the buckets to hoist them 25 featuring into the air to another guy who is dumping them into another metal box to dump them elsewhere. You do that for 8 solid hours, without a bathroom or meal break, then get to climb up the 200 featuring to get out and go home. Good times. At the very least I assume you're buff as heck. My first shift as a bartender. I was out of town before I started and told them as much. They still scheduled me for training during that week, so when I got back my first training shift was actually in place of my first real shift. It shouldn't be too busy tonight, they said. It was supposed to be 3 bartenders and me as a trainee, but the others called out so it was just me and my trainer, and we got slammed. It was so bad, and I didn't even get tipped out for it because I was training. Sounds more like they illegally stiffed you. I don't have one for myself, but in honor of 9/11, look up Ben Sliney. First day on the job, he had to shut down USS Base. This is true, but he held a senior role for decades before he was promoted to head honcho. My manager sent me to a Kmart that was going to shut down for my first day just as security guard training. This was about a 3-hour bus ride from where I was staying, but I didn't mind since it was only for one day. Little did I know that my boss had just sent me all the way over there to cover another person's shift. It was a really stressful day since I had no idea what I was actually supposed to be doing. I was the only one stationed there, and I wasn't used to standing 8 straight. I did get free slushies though. What flavor? Went into interview as a dishwasher at a Mongolian BBQ place. Interview was at 3 p.m. Got hired immediately, was told to show up for work at 6 p.m. Came in with no idea how to run anything. Huge stacks of dishes from all day that no one had done. Sink was full of raw chicken and shrimp bits that had just been sweltering in the heat from the sanitizer, so you know it was right back there. But I dug in and got to work. Close comes and everyone starts taking off. I still have a mountain of dishes from the line and the grill with no one to help me. Hiring manager comes back to tell me that she's out, but that when I'm done I should make sure to lock up. I was left alone to finish everything because apparently her dishwasher also meant I mopped and vacuumed and finished breaking down and cleaning the grill area. I didn't get to leave till almost 4 a.m. that night. I hope the pay was really worth it or you quit after that crap. I guess Navy boot camp counts. I didn't sleep for the first 24 hours, and they told me I couldn't wear my contacts and I didn't bring a backup pair of glasses, so I was walking around basically blind. I have a couple from the army, surgical tech training and first day on the job. 1. First day at featuring Sam Houston. After basic training, they take all the new medical MOS recruits and sat us in at the post theater. They played 4-5 hours of full color Vietnam era meatball medicine. We had to watch it all. If anyone puked or ran out, they got kicked out of the medical corps and assigned some crappy regular army job. So this amounted to hours of footage of field medics patching wounds while the patient was screaming, amputations with no anesthesia, guts being put back in, faces blown half off, guys trying to put their own arms back on while the medic frantically tried to stop the bleeding of the stub, full-grown men bleeding out and crying for their moms while their battle buddy cradles them, guys with their uniforms and half their skin burned off trying to walk around and pat patches of their own skin back on in shock. Guys whose buddies had been blown to crap and their buddies' bones impaled them like shrapnel. If they were lucky they were in a CSH or MASH. with blood-soaked docs and nurses trying to stitch them back together so they could survive a plane ride to a real hospital. The Cardencos were all watching everyone, and if you covered your eyes, puked or ran out, you were out of medcorps. Yeah, it affected me. Made a lot of people puke and run out. Probably 1/3 of the room failed that test. The hardest part for me wasn't the blood and guts. It was watching the men cry for their moms while bleeding out. So, once the first part of my training was done, the book and practice surgical training, I got sent to Letterman Army Medical Center to start the practical part of the training, real surgery assisting real doctors. I got assigned to the tonsil removal room, which is pretty slow pitch stuff. They had like 10 kids lined up for tonsil removal that day. However, the procedure itself is sort of barbaric. Tonsils get ripped out with a wire looped around it. It's pretty barbaric even to this day. So our first patient was a 8-year-old boy. Totally routine procedure. They pulled the first tonsil out of him, and unbeknownst to anyone, he had some sort of congenital difference with his carotid artery position. It was too close to the tonsil and they pulled a little piece of it off with a tonsil. He made it about another 30 seconds, but there was simply no possible way to get ahead of that artery. It was an unholy mess on everyone. So yeah, some pretty crappy first days as an AWT. That's so sad. All of it. Those poor men and that poor little boy. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.